Well, Ukraine and Russia are pointing fingers at each other after explosive shells hit a kindergarten with children and teachers inside. Holly Williams is the only network reporter to go there. She is back in Kyiv right now with a first-hand look at the destruction. Holly, good morning. What did you see?
Good morning. Well, there's been an escalation in violence in eastern Ukraine, where government forces have been fighting a war against Russian-backed separatists since 2014. Both sides are blaming each other, but this comes as the US claims Russia may have already begun a so-called false flag operation.
We flew with Ukraine's military to the country's far east, under 10 miles from the Russian border, to the village of Stanitsa Luhanska, where Ukraine says Russian-backed separatists fired heavy artillery into civilian areas yesterday, including this school, ironically named Fairy Tale Kindergarten, a place of innocence now shattered. Children would have had a lesson in the room that was hit just minutes later, according to Yulia Semenko, who works at the school.
When you look at the damage here, it must have been terrifying for the children that were inside this building.
We were told none of the students were hurt, but Ukraine says 3 adults were injured. Ukrainian soldiers showed us where they said another artillery shell hit in the playground.
There were no children here at the time.
Yeah. They all were inside building on the second floor.
In eastern Ukraine, government forces have been fighting Russian-backed separatists for nearly 8 years. A bloody conflict that's cost over 14,000 lives, according to Ukraine. But now, with up to 190,000 Russian troops estimated to be massed along Ukraine's border, there are fears Russia could stage or provoke a violent incident as a pretext for invasion. A scenario the US claims may already have started.
We have reason to believe that they are engaged in a false flag operation to have an excuse to go in.
Some believe Russia's President Vladimir Putin is playing a high-stakes game of Cold War-style brinkmanship, using the threat of invasion, trying to extract concessions from the US and its allies. If that's true, it's a dangerous game. Civilians could pay with their lives.
President Putin will oversee military exercises tomorrow by his country's nuclear forces, including the launching of ballistic and cruise missiles. Russia says that shouldn't worry anyone. Anne-Marie and Vlad.
So, Holly, one question that I have is, we know the president has said it, the Secretary of State has said it, that Vladimir Putin perhaps might use these false flag operations as a pretext for launching an invasion. In the Russian media, as you know, Holly, there are reports of Russians uncovering mass graves in eastern Ukraine. There are reports in the Russian press about atrocities, human rights abuses occurring in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, which people say is a pretext to this invasion. My question is, how would we, those of us in the West, you on the ground there, be able to verify what the Russians say is potentially happening and used as a pretext for war?
You know, it's so tricky, isn't it? So just today, there's a video doing the rounds on social media purporting to show Ukrainian troops trying to blow up chlorine cylinders in eastern Ukraine. There's also a report that the Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine are announcing a mass evacuation ahead of a supposed Ukrainian operation. The Ukrainian government, for its part, has categorically denied that it's planning an offensive action or sabotage. Look, all of the work that the US and the Ukrainian authorities have been doing in recent weeks and months, warning, saying, look, Russia could stage a kind of violent incident or provoke a violent incident as a pretext for moving in, as a justification for moving in, is just to tell people, be wary, be skeptical, don't take what you see at face value.
This is one thing that I've been thinking about ever since the report that Russian troops were being removed from the border. And then we had all this satellite images indicating
they were not.
Right. And so I kept on thinking to myself, well, why would Vladimir Putin, why would the Russians say something that is so easily verifiable? What is the end game? Is it just to sow uncertainty and confusion and distrust? But Holly, so I'm asking you, what is the possible end game of presenting an argument, presenting information that we can very quickly identify as false?
What is the end game? I wish I knew. It's such a good question, but I don't have an answer. But I think that there are some really key questions. Firstly, is this supposed pullback just a bluff by the Russians? Maybe. On the other hand, some people see signals coming out of Russia that Vladimir Putin might be looking for an off-ramp. In particular, there's apparently staged meeting with the foreign minister earlier this week where the foreign minister urged him to look for a diplomatic solution. Maybe Putin's decided the costs of an invasion are just too high. Does he really want to stage a full-blown invasion of Ukraine, which would, undoubtedly be bloody, not just for Ukraine, but for Russia? Or, as you saw in my report, as some people suspect, is this a high-level game of brinkmanship? Or has Vladimir Putin put all the chess pieces into place? And as the US keeps on saying, has he not decided yet what he's going to do?
It's a fascinating question. And there are some indicators, right? This meeting that could happen with the Secretary of State and Lavrov. And when these military drills with Belarus and Holly and Anne-Marie, that could also be a signal. Putin can say, finish the military drills. I'm going home. And
Vlad, there's also an argument that while we're in this period of uncertainty and world leaders are coming to Vladimir Putin's door and knocking on it, and he's getting the positive attention that perhaps he's seeking on the world stage. Right now, when there is uncertainty, when we don't know what he's going to do, we don't know his chess move, right? So he's getting everything that he really wants.
It's true.
So,
Holly, as always, incredible reporting. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it. Stay safe out there.